Hello everybody. I hope you had a good day and hopefully in class today you learned how to use this new tool I showed you called the GeoHistogram. Now the GeoHistogram was developed by the good folks at the Michigan Geographic Alliance, and it's a wonderful tool to keep this very extensive scale of world history in an understandable, manageable way of looking at it. And it takes advantage of the human brain's natural tendencies to organize knowledge in a space-time context. So let me show you what it looks like. We start off, and there's these very pretty rainbow vertical bars, and each one of those represent a major world region. The world is spherical, obviously, and to take this spherical object and represent it on a two-dimensional grid is you can kind of envision taking a sphere and squashing it flat. This would be the 7 world regions. On the y-axis, the up and down, it signifies time with the present at the top, the past at the bottom. And then we have this dividing line, and there was some talk, and there is talk among historians, CE or AD, BCE or BC. Now, in our readings and people talking, you're going to hear these designations intertwine. AD and BC have a Christian connotation, whereas CE, BCE has a more secular. For our purposes, it's a matter of semantics. We'll use them interchangeably. And below this, you will see the numbers of the past getting bigger, 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 and then heading this way into the present. The time gets higher and higher and higher. Now, normally, timelines in the past have the numbers in a horizontal fashion or an x-axis. The GeoHistogram differs where it's on the y-axis. I'm going to give a hypothetical historical activity. Let's look at where iron was used in ancient history. And we're going to use the GeoHistogram to do so. Now, if students had the time to go through those dates and whatnot, they will place on their GeoHistogram a symbol, in this case, little iron symbols. And from this, you can extrapolate certain data. For example, which part of the world had iron last? Clearly, you can see in the Americas. Where did iron develop first? In the Middle East. If you want to use when, ballpark, 1000 BC, 2000 BCE, roughly 1500 BCE. And it can be used for anything. These are arbitrary examples. But again, regions of the world on the x-axis, time on the y. Also on the GeoHistogram, we signify empires and groups of the past, where in the world they were located, the size, the geographic size. In this case, we have Mesopotamia, and you can see where farming started. This one is the spread of farming technology. You can see it precedes iron, and you can see the spread. Same sort of questions that can be, drawn up or asked and used. For example, why did farming happen in Oceania so late? Taro versus wheat, and go on for another day. We're more concerned how the tool works. And you can see examples of this, what was grown, staple crops of humanity, this, that, and the other thing. You can also add different empires as you go. And in this case, we have the Macedonian conquest of Alexander the Great going across a lot of the known world. We have Egypt. We have Mesopotamia in the Indus Valley. And for this example, I just want to start small to show the stories of the shapes actually tell a story of what transpired, but this will be flushed out and illuminated through a year of world history. But the visual and the reminder remains on the GeoHistogram. You can add Persia, okay, you can add, there's Rome, and hypothetically you could ask, which empire lasted longer, the Alexander the Great, Greek Macedonian, or the Roman? And you can see over time the Roman lasted longer, which was geographically larger. All these questions that will be flushed out over time. And then you can go even deeper. So this, going back to Alexander the Great, as we call it in class, Alexander's needle. You see how it coincided with iron. Now, Iron obviously is an advantage in military conquest and the growth of empire. And you can really use the GeoHistogram for whatever the purpose is needed. In this case, here's another symbol, Alexander's Bridge, as he crosses. And as geographers label. Geographers use symbols to illustrate a story. And there's some degree of creativity to how you do this. But as a hard set rule, geographers use symbols and they label to allow people to understand their story. Here's Alexander. Other bridges in history, if I'm using this as an example, these are probably some of the major movements of people and game changers. The one students are probably familiar with before class is Columbus. Controversial, certainly a game changer. A lot of these, they haven't been introduced yet, but they certainly will. And you can use this for any purpose. So hypothetically, if I were to say, I don't know, the rise of Oceania, where did it begin and when? Something to this effect. You can use it for religion, so the spread of religion. B for Buddhism, where did Buddhism start? A lot of people think Buddhism is synonymous with China. Siddhartha was actually Indian, and you can see the growth here in Central Asia, i.e. India. Islam, 622. In the Middle East, Muhammad, and then you can see where it spread. To this day, I think the religion that people associate with the Middle East is Islam, and we see its origins here. Then here's Buddhism with Islam, and why not? Let's throw some other symbols on there with Judaism and Christianity. And these are all just examples, and you can see where the religions are mixing up. You could say where the Crusades, where Christianity and Islam intertwine or met at a head, however you want to phrase it. So the GeoHistogram can be incredibly hectic. The GeoHistogram can be this. I wouldn't ever do this to my student, but just to show the wide range of what it can be, essentially, let's simplify it. Y-axis, time, x-axis, geographic regions, and then we see some empires, and we see some farming, and we see some iron, and we see some religion, and the story of human history is complex, and it's interesting, and it's involved, and the GeoHistogram is a tool to make sense of it. So to summarize, that's better. Main points of today. A GeoHistogram diagram is a way to organize the extensive scale of world history. The y-axis is a timeline of roughly 10,000 years. The past is at the bottom, the present is at the top. The x-axis contains geographic regions of the world. Colored shapes state the length an empire endured and what geographical area they inhabited. So we will be using this throughout the year, and I hope you understand this. And tomorrow we're going to learn how to assess claims. So have a good evening. We'll see you tomorrow.